Nobody believed it could happen twice in a row. Down a set, down a break, staring straight into elimination, and yet, Eala just refused to lose. Not once, not twice. TW times in a row. The 21-year-old from the Philippines clawed her way back from the brink and shocked the entire tennis world at the Mubadala DC Open. Former world number 4 Zheng Qinwen fell. Defending champion Leylah Fernandez fell. And by the time the dust settled in Washington, D.C., one name was echoing through every locker room, every commentary box, every social media feed on the planet: Eala. This is the story of the most electrifying 48 hours women's tennis has seen all year. Before a single ball was struck in Washington, D.C., Eala had already announced herself to the world in the most dramatic way possible. Just weeks earlier at Wimbledon, the young Filipina had produced the single greatest result of her career, becoming the first player from the Philippines in the Open era to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam. And she did it by toppling none other than defending champion Iga Swiatek along the way. That kind of run does not just build a ranking, it builds a reputation. And by the time she touched down in the American capital, Eala was no longer some quiet underdog slipping under the radar. She was ranked number 29 in the world, a career high, and every player in that draw knew her name. The Mubadala City DC Open, a WTA 500 hard-court event, marked her tournament debut in the U.S. capital, and it also marked the opening stretch of a brutal North American hard-court swing that would eventually lead into the massive 1,000-level events in Toronto and Cincinnati before the U.S. Open itself. There was pressure. There was fatigue creeping in after a long grass season. And there was a draw that gave her absolutely nothing easy. In the very first round, Eala was handed one of the toughest possible tests. Zheng Qinwen, a former world number 4 and Olympic gold medalist, entering the tournament on a wild card as she fought her way back up the rankings. Two players had crossed paths only once before, at the 2023 Asian Games, where Zheng had won in 3 tough sets. This time, the stage was bigger, the pressure was heavier, and nobody in that stadium in Washington had any idea just how wild the next 2 nights were about to become. The field around her was stacked with stars: Jessica Pegula, Alina Svitolina, Naomi Osaka, Madison Keys, and defending champion Leylah Fernandez, all sharing the same draw, all part of the same measuring stick Eala would have to pass through if she wanted to prove that Wimbledon was not a fluke. Whispers were already spreading through the tournament grounds. Fans wanted to know one thing only: when does Eala play next? The tournament chairman himself later admitted that over 80% of recent ticket inquiries were about her matches alone. The stage was set, the crowd was hungry, and the storm was about to break loose on the hard courts of the American capital. Monday afternoon arrived, and Eala walked out to face Zheng Qinwen in front of the most boisterous crowd the DC Open had seen all week. From the very first exchange, it was clear this would not be an easy afternoon. Zheng's serve was on fire. She would eventually crack 14 aces compared to Eala's 4, and her heavy forehand was dictating rallies with brutal efficiency. Eala dropped the opening set 4-6, and for a moment, it looked like the Wimbledon magic might not carry over to hard courts after all. But something shifted at 4-4 in the second set. Zheng had just taken Eala's serve without dropping a single point, and she looked completely in control of the match. Any lesser competitor might have folded right there. Instead, Eala answered immediately with a break of her own, and then something remarkable happened. She reeled off 7 straight games in a row, snatching the second set and racing out to a commanding 4-0 lead in the third. Zheng tried to fight back, finding a late break to slow the bleeding, but Eala broke right back almost instantly to seal the deal. The final score read 4-6, 6-4, 6-1, a stunning reversal that evened her career head-to-head with Young at 1 win apiece. The match had lasted nearly 2.5 hours, and by the end of it, the crowd was on its feet, chanting, buzzing, completely swept up in what fans were already calling Eala mania. She spoke afterward about mindset, about believing in her own game even when her opponent's level rises, about having more experience now to hold on to that belief deep into the biggest moments. It was more than a win. It was a statement. She had just taken down a former world number 4 and Olympic champion, and she had done it the hard way, from a set down against a red-hot serve, in front of a crowd that had come specifically to see her fight. But nobody, not even the most optimistic fan in that stadium, could have predicted that this dramatic comeback was only a preview of what was coming next. Because waiting for her in the very next round was an opponent even more dangerous, the defending champion of the entire tournament, and the story of back-to-back comebacks was only just getting started. Wednesday brought an assignment that most players circle on the schedule and quietly dread: a showdown against defending Mubadala DC Open champion Leylah Fernandez. This was only the second ever meeting between the two, and history was not on Eala's side. Fernandez had won their lone previous encounter in straight sets earlier in the year at the Stuttgart Open. Fernandez, ranked number 34 in the world but boasting a career high of number 13, arrived in Washington as the reigning champion with every reason to feel confident on her own turf. The opening set went almost entirely Eala's way. She broke early, built a lead, and closed it out 6-2 with a display of precision that left Fernandez struggling, committing 14 unforced errors compared to Eala's remarkably clean 4. It looked for a moment like this one might be a straightforward statement win. Then the match turned violently. Fernandez found her rhythm out of nowhere and reeled off 5 consecutive games, storming out to a stunning 5-1 lead in the second set. The crowd fell silent. The comeback queen suddenly found herself the one needing a comeback, staring down the very real possibility of a deciding third set against a defending champion who was now fully locked in. This was the moment that would define the match, and arguably the entire tournament for Eala. Rather than crumbling under the pressure, she regained her composure completely, in a manner strikingly similar to her comeback against Zheng Qinwen just 2 days earlier. She forced her way back into contention, dragged the set into a tiebreak, and then absolutely rolled through it, winning it 7-1. The final score, 6-2, 7-6, meant Eala had done it again, clawing back from the edge of disaster to beat the defending champion of the tournament. Afterward, she reflected honestly on those tricky moments, admitting that when your level drops and you know it, but the answers just are not coming, those are the hardest minutes in any match. Statistically, the difference was stark. Eala won 63% of points on Fernandez's second serve, compared to Fernandez winning just 38% on Eala's. It was not luck, it was a pattern. For the second straight match, and the second straight day, Eala had been pushed to the very edge, and for the second straight time, she had refused to break. By Thursday morning, headlines out of Manila, Washington, and every corner of the tennis world were saying the same thing in different words. Eala had done something special. This was not simply 2 wins strung together by coincidence. This was a pattern with real, tangible meaning behind it. Twice in 2 matches, she had faced adversity that would have ended most players' tournaments. A set down against a former world number 4 with a howitzer serve, and a 5-game collapse against a defending champion on her own turf, and twice she had found something extra when it mattered most. Analysts pointed to her mental resilience as the defining trait of her rise this season, the same quality that carried her past defending champion Iga Swiatek at Wimbledon just weeks earlier. Her coach's simple advice, to keep going and stay in every point because chances will eventually come, was proving to be more than just a slogan. It was becoming her identity on court. The numbers backed up the eye test too. Her career high ranking of world number 29 was no accident. It was the direct result of a player who had learned how to manufacture wins even when her level dipped mid-match. Fans on social media flooded timelines with reactions, and the phrase Eala mania, first used to describe the electric atmosphere during her win over Zheng, quickly spread far beyond the tournament grounds and into a genuine cultural moment for Filipino sports fans watching from thousands of miles away. Sports commentators noted that the tournament chairman himself had confirmed the overwhelming majority of recent ticket inquiries were centered entirely around her matches, a remarkable sign of drawing power for a player who was relatively unknown outside dedicated tennis circles just a year prior. What made this run so compelling was not just the results, but the manner of them. back-to-back comebacks against legitimate, dangerous opponents, delivered with composure and clarity under immense pressure. It reinforced a growing belief among analysts that Eala was no longer a rising talent to watch cautiously from a distance. She was already a legitimate threat in any draw she entered, capable of beating former top 5 players and defending champions alike on a surface that was not even considered her strongest. The tennis world was not just surprised, it was recalibrating its expectations for what this young player might be capable of for the remainder of the season. With both signature wins now behind her, Eala moved into the quarterfinals of the Mubadala DC Open, carrying a wave of momentum that few could have predicted just 1 week earlier. The road ahead remained demanding. The North American hardcourt swing was only beginning, with consecutive WTA 1000-level events in Toronto and Cincinnati looming immediately afterward, followed eventually by her second career appearance at the US Open. Yet there was reason for genuine optimism heading into that stretch. Eala had relatively few ranking points to defend from the previous season's hardcourt campaign, meaning every strong result from this point forward represented pure upward momentum for her climb up the rankings. A first-round bye already awaited her in Toronto, guaranteeing additional points before she had even struck a ball there. But rankings and schedules were secondary to the larger story unfolding in real time. A 21-year-old from the Philippines was proving, match after match, that she belonged among the very best competitors on tour, regardless of surface, regardless of opponent, regardless of how far behind she found herself on the scoreboard. Her run through Washington captured something bigger than a single tournament. It captured the arrival of a player whose mental toughness had become just as dangerous as her ground strokes. For a nation that had watched her make Open-era history at Wimbledon only weeks before, these 2 comeback victories in Washington were confirmation rather than surprise. Proof that the breakthrough was not a one-time moment, but the beginning of a sustained climb. As she prepared for her quarterfinal test, the questions swirling around her were no longer about whether she belonged on this stage. They were about how high she could ultimately climb this season. One thing was certain as the tennis world watched closely, Eala was not finished making headlines, and whatever came next in Washington and beyond, nobody wanted to look away. If you enjoyed this latest tennis update and want to stay ahead of the biggest stories in the world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe the channel right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the action. See you in the next video.